Welcome to the Behind the Wind podcast. I'm Lauren Lane. For over 50 years, the LSI team has been dedicated to the science of business development. We've seen the impact of our work and how it's evolved into economic development and now social impact work. This week, we're excited to meet again with Jill Flygar, LSI's VP of Economic Development and Social Impact. In this episode, we're going to talk about common bottlenecks at different levels of government and economic development organizations, the importance of thinking big in collaboration within communities, and how to set up economies for long-term growth after government intervention has expired. Let's jump in.
As I've said at our first episode together, we've had this long relationship and have known each other for a long time. And I've always admired your work and have really, I tell people this all the time, you're one of the most talented economic developers and executives in this space that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And I love your creativity. And we did not get through a lot of what I wanted to cover in our last episode together. So let's pick up sort of where we left off from all those months ago.
That sounds great. And thank you. I appreciate the compliment, and I have been a huge admirer of you as well. So I just love being here at LSI with you and the whole team.
It's been fun. It is, and it is. We have got such a great team. It's just the creativity coming out of our team, the new ideas that our team has just continues to come up with for our clients is remarkable, and it is fun. Every day I'm excited to get up and do it again because it's going to be something good every day. I just know it.
It really is. And I know this is a little off the topic of what we're here to talk about, but we're in the middle of our strategic planning. And since this is the first time for me here at LSI, it has been so much fun to be a part of that and to get involved with my team at the economic development and social impact, and to see all the great ideas that they have and how we can implement innovation and great ideas that will impact our clients and grow our clientele here at LSI. And so, that's one of the great things that we're doing right now as an entire organization. But, the impact that it will have on our line of business, economic development, and social impact is one of strength and growth, and I'm excited about that.
Well, and I really think this is one of your superpowers is building strategy for an organization. You've got such a unique talent to see the big picture and convey that into deliverables and build a plan around it. So I can't wait to see it. I'm excited.
Great. Well, we'll be done with it tomorrow. So next week.
Some of the things that we had talked about in our last episode together was how challenging it is for a lot of federal, state, and especially municipal organizations where they have limited bandwidth and just a lack of skills in doing some of these very things. They're building a strategy and then executing on the strategy. It is, you and I have seen so many of these organizations, even mature, large organizations where they struggle. They've got so much on their plate. They've got so much of the tactical work that they're dealing with on a daily basis that to step back and get strategic especially is rare, I think, in even really mature organizations. But then to implement strategy with limited resources, and talk about these organizations, you can empathize with this challenge more than anyone on What is it that allows for some of these organizations to get over some of these bottlenecks and roadblocks that prevents them from achieving their objectives?
Wow, that's a loaded question, and a really important one too. I think I mentioned this in our last conversation, but important to reiterate. I've been at all levels, specifically of state government, and seen it all from the governor's office of planning and budget, and then all the way down into a independent state agency, and I'm going to call that a startup of state government. So I've seen the whole picture, and I talk with my hands. I'm on a podcast, so I'm going to try not to do that.
Oh, I love
it. So we're looking at the entire state government and all of the nuances that go with that, all of the various challenges, their requests, and the opportunities that the state has. And it was fascinating to be at that level and to see everything. And you also are, from that level, able to dive a little bit with agencies and to programs into their needs and analyze a little bit more into how you can help them, whether that is through organizational change or funding. And then you get down a little bit deeper into a state agency like the governor's office of economic opportunity. I was at the executive level, but over operations, and operations is a different animal than, say, if you are doing corporate recruitment or business development. And you're now seeing it one layer deeper. And then at the Utah Inland Port Authority, you're a quasi-state, nonprofit corporation, but a startup, and you have nothing. And you have to develop everything from scratch, policy, budget, and staff, and strategy. Nobody gives you strategy when you're a startup. You have to figure that out, and that comes with some pats on the back and a lot of criticism, and that's okay. That's okay. When you're in organizations and you're developing strategy, then you do what's best for the organization at the time you're in that organization. Now, I'm going to go back up and back down around bottlenecks, because those exist at every level, and they're definitely going to exist at the highest level when you're looking at the entirety of the state. When everyone rolls up to one level, there's definitely going to be bottlenecks there. And when you're creating startups, you can think there's bottlenecks, but there are, and those bottlenecks are often politics. And we deal with those bottlenecks simply by understanding what they are, where they are, and creating efficiencies in systems. Systems approach is always the best way to smooth out and to streamline bottlenecks in systems. And we like to, and I'll quote my really good friend. It's not quite a full quote, but I'm going with Chris Cox, my good friend Chris Cox, who, we love her, don't we, Sean?
She's one of the most amazing civil servants I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And if you don't know Chris Cox, just Google her. She's an amazing individual.
She is, and that she'll talk about the seven deadly sins. It's all around technology, but you need more money, you need more technology, you need more time, you need more of everything, right? And the more of everything is never the answer. It's about getting to the root cause and identifying that root cause, finding that the true bottleneck in the system, and then finding the solution for that root cause, and creating streamline. Technology sometimes is the answer, and sometimes it could be about people. Sometimes you don't have the right people on the bus.
That's right. One of the things that I have found fascinating is every organization that we deal with, all of the federal, state, municipal, it doesn't matter if they're a large organization, it doesn't matter if it's a small organization, is everyone, they have this almost a standard script when we meet with them, and it's all the same. And they always start out by saying, you don't understand. You don't understand the challenges that we have. We have limited resources. It doesn't matter if you are the largest municipal organization, the largest federal organization. Every one of these organizations will say, we have limited funding. I mean, I've never gone into an organization where they've said, oh, we've got plenty of funding to do all the things we need to do. We can't hire people. I mean, and I just think that it is fascinating to see this common thread. And they all think that they're unique. All of these executives think, you don't understand. We're not like these other organizations you've worked with. We don't have a team that can do this. We don't have funding. And I think it's reassuring to some of these organizations that we hear this from every organization. It is a common thread no matter what. And that the clients that we've worked with and have helped them achieve their objectives in terms of a major project, capturing funding for some vision, it is getting over some of these roadblocks and bottlenecks that they all think is unique to their organization. So maybe what we've tried to do is evangelize over the years. You're not alone. You're not unique. Every organization typically has these same challenges, and being creative to overcome these challenges is what this is about, and why you were hired, right? So I think starting with that, giving these government executives some assurance that they're not unique. Every organization that we work with have similar challenges, and that building a strategy, building a vision, and getting creative on how you're going to execute, especially on a project that is maybe multi-year, might span multi-political terms, which is always a challenge, right? And where are we going to get the funding? I love to hear organizations that really dream big, and sometimes if a government executive has been beaten down over the years, or has been let down over the years, which often happens, then they stop dreaming, they stop thinking big, and trying to get them to envision what could be, what is the art of the possible, is sometimes its own ceiling for some of these organizations.
Yeah, no, that's, again, you keep opening these great topics for me. I love it. And one of the things that that is fascinating to me is, right, I was on that side of the fence. And it's like ingrained in you that there's never enough, never enough of whatever. There's never enough resources. There's never enough people. There's never enough funding.
Never enough time. Oh, no, we
Never
don't
enough
have enough
time.
time.
And so you, when someone comes with, but there's so many things to do, but there's never enough. So, not to throw anybody, under the bus, but remember the old, we're going to do, 10% more with 50% less. That's not an actual, but that you get the point. And so we start accepting that we are supposed to do more and more and more with less. And when we're stretched so thin and there's greatness to be done, greatness to be had out there, but we don't have the resources. Well, I would say that we don't have the resources not to do some of this stuff. You've got to find the resources to go after the things that will make the largest impact on our economy. And so if you're looking at whether that's economic development or social impact, and they're intertwined so nicely, then what is that for you? What is that in your organization, whether that's a government organization, a nonprofit organization, a city, town, our state government? But a strong economy provides resources for addressing social challenges. And on the flip side of that, social improvements lead to a more productive and stable economy. And so when we look at those things together, how can we not invest in economic development and social impact? And like I said at the beginning of this, I was on that side where I would say we just don't have the funds to put towards another program, another firm, another whatever is out there. And I've come to the conclusion that in many of my roles, if I had allocated a very small percentage of the budget towards funding to go after the right infrastructure, the right social development, the right investments, the impact would be far greater than any investment I ever would have made in that funding program.
I love that. And I totally agree. I mean, going back to this idea of trying to get these leaders inside these government organizations to think big and look at what could be the art of the possible, even beyond their service in the organization, is a real challenge. I think starting there with a lot of these, at a level with an executive where you're saying, okay, if you had unlimited funding, unlimited staff and subject matter experts and time, what would you love to see happen in the next 20 years? And getting them to think like that, that is a rare skill. And yet, if we could encourage these organizations to dream first and then build the strategy around this vision and figure, back into what is this going to cost. I had an opportunity to meet with just an amazing government executive that I really admire, and did this exercise with her. And what came out, I mean, it took a lot of guidance and pulling on some of these threads as she would say, well, what about this? What about this? To at the end of this session, it was such an amazing vision that she had for this region that she was responsible for, and then starting to talk to her about strategy, backing into real milestones and a plan around that. I mean, I'd love to see our team and more government executives really start with this vision. If there were no limited resources, what would we want to achieve for our city, for our state, and the elected? I mean, let's face it, the elected are the politicals as well. Whether you're an appointee or you're an elected executive, they fall into this as well. That, what can I do? And I've got 4 years or 2 years or 6 years and then I've got to think about being reelected. It is a challenge I see that's systemic throughout our government, not dreaming big enough, not looking at what you'd really want to achieve if you did not have all of these constraints that is preventing you from making that happen. And just even that exercise with this individual, I think was so valuable for her, where she's now passionate about saying, yes, let's go, let's do this. Let's invest in pursuing new federal funding. Let's invest in some feasibility studies, for example, that she would have was never on her radar. Let's look at pursuing, as you said, the right individuals. We're going to bring in the right individuals into the organization that's going to help us achieve those objectives.
I agree, and I love that the format that you laid out and how you approach that, because if an organization would really look at the costs associated with what it would take to really get what they would like to get if there were no constraints on them, and then compare it to what they could get from a organization like LSI, the fact that we're a full service organization, and we do research, you mentioned feasibility studies. We can do on the research side, white papers for them. We can do demographics for them. We can do anything around that research, but beyond that, opportunity pipelines, grant writing, post management, grant award management. There's really not a lot that LSI can't do for an organization that would require that organization to hire, 1 to 2 dozen people and to do. And so now doing that cost analysis, what does that look like? And what now is your ROI on hiring some, LSI to go after the things that you need? And what is it? Do you need a feasibility study? Do you need a market analysis? Do you need strategy work up front? And when that is done, let's go in and now get you some grant opportunities and the funding around your needs that were identified. So I love that. The idea of thinking big. There are individuals out there that I know are really good at this, and those that they're scared. They're scared to think. It's not that they can't think big. I think they're scared to think big. Who will it tick off? And will it shorten their career? I'm going to give you an unpopular example. And you, Sean, you know where I came from. And the Port Authority had its critics. But it was one of the most amazing organizations. And it was forward thinking. It was moving in an environmentally conscious and friendly way. It was established on the west side of Salt Lake City, near the Great Salt Lake. There are going to be environmental critics, and I understand them. I got it. We were listening to them, and we were setting up buffers and working with developers around how to do things that would have less impact on the Great Salt Lake and on the surrounding land. And Jack Hedge, the executive director, was one of the most forward-thinking, big thinkers out there. He knows logistics and ports more than anybody, and definitely more than anybody in the state of Utah. And so it was one of the most exciting projects, number one I've ever been a part of, but in this state. But maybe he thought a little too big, thought a little bit outside the boundaries. He was coloring too far outside the lines. And some people didn't like it. And unfortunately, it cost him his job. And they're not going too far. They're still using a lot of his stuff, but they're not quite as forward thinking. They're not moving the needle quite the way Jack was. Utah's no longer on the national radar. And so we need people to think big, but we also have to embrace those who think big. And because the economic development, the sustainability, so sustainable economic growth also looks at environmental and social factors, and sustainable social impact will also consider economic feasibility. Those things don't have to be one or the other. And I think it's important to remember that this is not a zero-sum game. When we look at economic development and social impact at LSI, the thing that I love most about being here at LSI and having economic development and social impact together is the fact that they're so interconnected, and the collaboration between the two makes our community stronger and a better place to live.
I agree. You are, you're going to hate me saying this. You are so humble, and I love that you give Jack all the credit for this strategy, but I know that so much of the elements of the inland port strategy was your strategy, your recommendations, your subject matter expertise of Utah and the Intermountain West. And so, and I just, your recommendations on building an ecosystem around logistics, which would be the foundations for this, and then also developing a consortium of organizations interested in import and export of products tied to that logistics ecosystem is brilliant. And I mean, the reality is there are a lot of other opportunities throughout the U.S., other ports that I would love to discuss this strategy with those teams. And I mean, I think it was brilliant, Jill.
No, I agree. And we'll go talk to them So, um, we have some times set aside, and we will definitely go
It was
and talk.
brilliant. I mean,
Go talk to those folks. Mm-hmm.
the,
But
the
go ahead.
model that you developed really, I mean, you could scale this model and taking this framework to even more complex ports throughout the U.S. and frankly throughout the world is, I think, is incredible. So I look forward to that.
Great, great. And I agree. I will say Jack taught me this because I knew not very much about how cargo moved. And we'd go on long drives, to conferences, and he'd, teach me all the lingo. So one of the things, he'd always say is that it's you have to have the volume matters, and so driving volume will reduce costs. It's a no-brainer, like it's not rocket science. And so when you start talking to the companies and we start doing the research on who is importing and who is exporting, then it starts to make sense. We need to drive more of that volume in, and we can lower rates, and more people are going to start using rail because we can reduce those rates, and that's better for our environment. And it's also better for our roads because truckers pay very little for repair of our roads. And nothing against truckers. I always have to say that because it's nothing, they're going to maintain their dominance. Even if we moved, 5% to rail, it's going to be better for the economy. But on the flip side, those who move their goods by rail pay. They pay for all the maintenance on the rail, and the greenhouse gas emissions go down dramatically. So there's enough cargo, believe me, to move in all forms. So that is one area. And the other thing, just to remind everyone, we didn't get the name Crossroads of the West for nothing. Yes, Golden Spike, that's where it came from, but it also created an area in which goods and people continue to move through this state. And I still have all the statistics in my head. I won't bore everyone today with them, but we have a larger majority than any other state of goods moving through the state of Utah. And we need to do something to shake that up a little bit in terms of the emissions being emitted through our state.
Love it. I want to shift gears to another topic that I think is fairly relevant. But before I do, the other two common threads that I see in almost every one of these economic development organizations, or a state organization that has responsibility for infrastructure even, is that they are so afraid to commit to a quantitative metric. Mm-hmm. And almost invariably, if I go into any organization, I think this is something else that our team has evangelized well over the years, is you need quantitative metrics to work against. And the challenge, I think a lot of the frustration that these organizations have is working against no target, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have asked the executive lead of an organization, what is your objective? Tell me exactly how many jobs do you plan to create? How many, what is do you have an objective for tax? Do you have, generating new tax? Do you have an objective for capturing federal dollars? They are so afraid of committing to an objective and then not meeting that objective that there's no objective. And I think most of these organizations are working under something so broad, so general. When you ask, I was in one of the top states in terms of population and budget recently, and I asked this executive, what is your objective over the next 12 months for this office? And he said, job creation. That's our objective. I said, you start drilling into it, and there is no definition around that at all. And I mean, it's almost, I think it's demoralizing for a lot of these organizations that even if you set a quantitative objective in the organization that you don't meet, but you have a valiant effort by your team that you can show progress and you can show this is the trajectory we are on. I think it's unifying and galvanizing versus we're going to create new jobs, and there's no definition around that. Well, what kind of jobs? Well, we don't know. We want high wage jobs. Yeah, everybody wants high wage jobs. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? How many jobs? What kind of tax base do you hope to achieve through this job creation? What kind of metrics are you going to convey back to the legislature to justify your existence? And I think this is another challenge that a lot of these, really good organizations too. I'm not saying that the staff or the leadership in these organizations are not strong, because most of the time they're amazing. We're interfacing with amazing, smart individuals, and yet this challenge tied to a lack of quantitative metrics. I mean, even if they have, something broad, this is our objective to increase jobs or, whatever it might be. If it's not quantitative, I think it is demoralizing for these organizations. And I'd encourage the leadership of large and small organizations to be courageous enough to set quantitative objectives and be held accountable. So anyway, I told this, this is the postscript to this. I said, early in my career, I worked strategy. And I was really good at this. I worked strategy for even some big Fortune 500 companies. I was a young 20-something starting out my career building strategy and usually business development strategy for these organizations. And I found the same thing even in Fortune 500 companies. You'd say, what's your objective? Well, to increase revenue for the company. Well, what does that look like? Well, we don't know. It was so hard to pin them down. They didn't want that even because they didn't want to be held accountable. Yet they wanted to hold us accountable. And I learned this lesson that, build an objective and then have your team rally around that quantitative metric, that even if you don't hit it, that you can see the progress that's been made, the trajectory the organization is on. It's such a better approach in terms of implementing the vision and the strategy than having some nebulous, increase revenue or, increase jobs in our region, or we want to, make it quantitative, commit to it, have the courage. Can you imagine if that was flipped, we were hired to build a business development strategy for Boeing, which this is a real scenario, and that we said to them, you pay us, you pay us to increase revenue. Well, they want to know what it is. What is that? You need a baseline as well. You need some baseline. This is where we're at. This is where we're going to be in 12 months, or this is where we're going to be in 5 years. And this is how we're going to get there through solid milestones and deliverables along the way to achieve that objective. And so, this seemed to be the theme of our discussion of what is common, what do we see as we interface with these organizations that are, amazing people, amazing organizations that they think they're unique in their challenges. And we also see gaps in some things like visioning, like creating solid metrics, having the courage to commit to a solid metric, and holding your contractors responsible as well. I mean, almost every one of these organizations have contractors. They can't do it by themselves, and nor should they. And holding your contractors accountable is key as well. So,
yeah. No, that's I agree with that. And I'll go back to where I started the conversation, and that was with the LSI strategic planning that we are in the final throes of. And that is one of the things that I love about what we are doing, that each one of our objectives and goals are tied to key results that must have a strong metric and quantitative metric tied to it. And so again, we will plan, we'll put timelines, we'll put milestones around each of those as programmatic leads. And the goal is always to reach those, and from my perspective, I try to make them as realistic as possible, not go completely overboard. But as we're working through those over the next year, this one is an 18-month strategic plan. Over the next 18 months, we'll definitely look to see where there's any gaps, and then see if we need to add any additional milestones in there and things like that. But I'm excited about this because it's one of the first times I've really done a strategic plan in which we've added so many layers to it that it really helps you to get to your end goal, which are these metrics. I will say that we did a pretty thorough strategic plan with the port. There were just some complications along the way. But I'm really excited about the one we're doing right now.
Love it. I think that one of the things I've observed, especially in government, I mean, it happens in business. I see it I see it in my personal life as well, that individuals often will overestimate the amount that they can accomplish in a short period of time, and they way underestimate what they can accomplish in a long period of time. And what I've encouraged our executives within the company to do is focus on this longer period of time. I've said to the SLT over the last several years, we really ought to be looking at a 3-year plan and try to break it down into 1,000 days. That's kind of a good round number. And even that is hard for most people to think out 3 years out, 1,000 days out. What are we going to achieve in the next 1,000 days? But I think this was the compromise, 18 months versus 3 years. And like I said, I've really encouraged people to think about that. I see so many people in their personal life and their business life where they will significantly overestimate. I'm gonna write a 500-page proposal over the weekend, right? It's impossible. I see it all the time. They just have this idea that I'm going to accomplish all of the. I've got 100 things on my list of things to do, and I'm going to get it done. I'm going to go in early this morning. I'm going to get all this done today. Way overestimate what they can do in the short term, yet way underestimate what they're going to accomplish in a quarter, in the next year, in the next 18 months, and trying to get individuals to think that way. That if you have this vision of training and completing a marathon, and you start, I'm gonna start 2 weeks out with no training, it's impossible, right? Yet we see people do this in their business, personal life, and especially we see this in government, that they overestimate, and a lot of this stuff is very tactical. I'm gonna be focused on these things. I'm gonna get this accomplished today, and they don't have they're not looking at this opportunity to accomplish something really special, complete the marathon, with good, solid, a steady trajectory of increasing daily, focusing on not getting hurt, all the things. It's just you go out and train for an endurance race 2 weeks before, and it's gonna be painful, or you're not gonna make it there. And having a vision for being strategic, staying focused on the long term and the objective, that's going to come with some solid metrics, I think is so critical.
Well, I'm gonna go back to Chris Cox real quick. And one of the things that I think, she taught me very well, and I think that she reiterates over and over in her lessons, is the idea of the myth of multitasking. And I was a working mom of 3 kids, and I could multitask better than anyone. No, I didn't. Right?
No,
some things just didn't get done very well.
That's right.
Right? That's the myth of multitasking. You're doing something halfway. And so, and something else is taking twice as long as it ever should have taken if you just would have focused on it. And so those are the gives and takes. If you have a list of 100 things that you think you're going to get done in one day, they're not getting done because you're going to get interrupted 12 times, which means whatever you were doing is now not as good as it would have been done if you just would have isolated yourself for 30 minutes and shut the door and no interruptions and just got it done, right? But you were so worried about checking your boxes and getting everything done that nothing got done well that day.
And as often is the case in government organizations, it's probably something that may not be strategic. And it's very difficult, especially if you lack quantitative objectives, to stay focused on this is what we have got to accomplish. No matter what else happens today, we've got to work this issue. We've got to work towards this objective, to this, what funding, the metrics. And like I said, I think that some of these very good government organizations are rudderless in terms of having the courage to commit to quantitative objectives that they're going to align their entire team to. And so, that's some advice and things that I've seen interfacing with federal, state, municipal offices over the years, and even just in the last few weeks. So I hope that that's beneficial for government organizations, especially that if you're leading any organization, but especially some of these government organizations that have these challenges, hopefully this gives some guidance on what we've seen systemically across the U.S. in other organizations, and also some recommendations on how to align your team. As we open this discussion together, I continually hear this, no matter what the organization looks like or the size of the organization, we just don't have the funding. One of the things that we have tried to convey to so many of our government organizations, whether you're working in a Department of Transportation organization, or we talked about ports, and or an economic development organization, or whatever it is. Even, frankly, even if you're working social impact, if you're working on the front lines of some social issue, it is just, I know that that's going to be the first thing that the executive's going to say is, we'd love to do this, whatever it is, just don't have the funding. We're now approaching 3 years since the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, BIL, was signed by the president, which was right before Thanksgiving 2021. So we're now 2 years into the implementation of this, and we had followed this through the Congress, both the House and then the Senate, since early in the COVID recovery process, and then finally saw this happen in November of 2021. There was this long delay as the administration built guidance for the agencies on how this funding would be administered. The appropriation was nearly $2 trillion that was infrastructure investment and jobs. People forget that IIJA meant, the J in IIJA was jobs, really designed to change the long-term economic prosperity of disenfranchised demographics and communities. So we've had recently a lot of our government clients that have come back to us and have said, what is the status of IIJA? What is the status of this $2 trillion? I think that, there's this opportunity over the next 12 months for us to work with government organizations that have vision, that want to achieve a once-in-a-generation project, whatever that is. It may be rail, it may be development of a port or an ecosystem or a bridge, which we're working. It may be creating, that somebody has a vision for building manufacturing and these high-wage jobs in a region. The funding that is still available, is just remarkable. As much work that we've done on IIJA, our team has been so involved with hundreds of IIJA, BIL grants and contracts. There is still over $1 trillion available. Oh
my gosh!
If you add in the CHIPS Act and some of the other ancillary programs and funding tied to IIJA, where the initial program was $1.2 0.6. I mean, everything that has been spent has been 200 billion, which is huge. I mean, that is a huge number. Let's not discount that, but it is a fraction of what is still available. So, I mean, some people are even saying that, there's $1.5 trillion still available. What we understand is that the House, with some support by the Senate, has advised the agencies that they need to have this money committed. It's 5-year funding. I mean, let me just put that out there. It is 5-year funding. So the project doesn't need to be completed for another 5 years. But the obligation of this funding needs to happen by fiscal year 2024. By October 1st of 2024, whatever is not obligated is going to roll back into the Treasury. So while it took a long time to get IIJA going, there's been a lot of challenges just with bandwidth of these offices. Trying to spend $2 trillion is tough. I mean, people.
It's not that easy.
People think. I mean, I know.
Money.
People think that's probably ironic. What do you mean? It's hard to spend that kind of money. But the reality is, it is very challenging. If you've had a budget of $40 million, in the history of your organization, now you have $6 billion that you need to spend. To have the staff and the administration and the infrastructure necessary to make that happen is tough, believe it or not. So there's been this long runway from the time that the president signed the IIJ Act into the BIL law to where we are today. It's frankly, I think it's remarkable that the agencies have spent $200 billion. LSI has been a big part of that. We have had, like I said, hundreds of campaigns that we have worked on IIJA where we've done the capture and proposal for a lot of government, state, municipal entities and or semi-government entities. But there's still at least $1 trillion, maybe $1.5 trillion left sitting in these agencies where the agencies are panicked. The Congress is going to pull that money back into the Treasury and realign part of the debt. So what I would suggest in concert with what some of the things that we've talked about today and having vision, thinking about what really is possible now more than ever, you as a federal, state, or municipal entity have the ability to do something really special through this funding that is sitting out there for the next 12 months. But I mean, there's a limited amount of time to capture this funding, and my advice to these organizations is that you always are telling us there's no funding for whatever it is that we want to do. I'm telling you there is plenty of money to achieve some of these once in a generation objective projects through this IIJ fund. And I would encourage you to get with Jill and her team to discuss what do we need to do to capture this money.
That's great, Sean. And I think you set that up so great. I think one of the great things about economic development and some of the things that we do and can do for organizations and for communities is that we're setting up economies to grow well after government intervention has expired, right? And we're meeting needs today. So what is your strategy? What is your need today without compromising the ability of future generations. And so, yes, we have once in a generation funding opportunities. What is it that we can do? What is it that the community needs? Is it infrastructure? Are they, you mentioned a bridge. Is it, water, sewer, fiber? Are they, right now, I am big. I want to go after alternative energy, right? And so, what can we do with these companies around alternative energy, whether that is hydrogen or EV, and because they have different there's different needs. EV is really good for our everyday passenger cars and vehicles, and hydrogen is really good for those heavy duty, our trains and our cargo trucks and cargo handling equipment, and rail and things like that. So there's different needs and different types of infrastructure. And who and where do we need all of these various types of infrastructure once in a lifetime, meeting the needs of today? We're not compromising future generations, so we're not saddling them with debt. We're not saddling them by, not that I'm against incentives, I'm not at all. I think incentives have their place in the economy, but we're not taking funds, right, at least right now, because we don't need to, and taking that out of future generations, and we're providing the infrastructure and the investments where they're needed. So that's where I would, put my 2 cents in that. Let's strategize. Let's identify the needs. LSI is across the nation. We have our nice headquarters here in Utah. We also have a sub headquarters in Sacramento and in DC. But we just had huge wins in Michigan and in Arkansas, and we continue to have new wins every day. And so we want to continue to help communities grow and put infrastructure and investment in the ground. And right now is the time to capitalize and to capture federal opportunities.
Love it. So again, we got through a very small part of what I thought we were going to discuss today. So we could do a whole episode on government incentives. Maybe we should.
We could. Maybe we should. Sean, it's because you and we like to talk.
I know. Every time we get together, some little seed that turns into this hour and a half episode. So, Jill, thanks so much. And the other thing that I love is that in my 30-year career, we have not had a bunch of University of Utah fans on the staff, on my personal staff. And I think it's fun that you're so rabid about the University of Utah as I am, and
at the end of every episode, we'll just simply have to say, "Go Utes!" And we're both, by the way, I know again you can't see us, but the U is flying, and Oregon State this week. I don't know when this is going to air, but 4-0, baby.
I know it's
and Oregon State this week, so
and that's going to be a tough game.
It is.
And I just think that that is such a great program. They always have a great program. It's weird that they're playing Friday night.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it's going to be, it'll be fine. But I think this is going to be a real challenge for the Utes.
It is. I am all for the health of players. So please be healthy, Cam, at all times.
Exactly right.
Come back and play. I'm also, Nate has done great. Yeah, he really has. He has been a trooper. We would not have won a couple of games without him. So I'm on the bandwagon of Nate Johnson. But Oregon State, Cam, please come back.
The injuries have been just unbelievable. So what they've achieved, I think that defense is incredible, and that has really positioned the Utes to be in this 4-0 situation, which hasn't happened for a lot of years. I mean, this has been it's been fun already this year, and a lot of that I attribute to the defense. But we need a healthy offensive line and a quarterback. I mean, I think Nate Johnson is going to be amazing. He's got a great future ahead of him. He is fast and smart, and I just think that he's going to be amazing. We're going to need some of our first string in this for Oregon State.
Hey, Sean, maybe we can just do a University of Utah football podcast.
I can talk about that. They've been breaking my heart since I was a little kid. So they're amazing. I mean, for what Kyle Whittingham has done over the last 20 years, every year for 20 years, that team has been a ranked team. They've been a contender in their conference or won the conference and have been talked about as a national contender for 20 years. It is amazing. And I mean, what Kyle has done with his program has been incredible. I think what he learned under Urban Meyer when Urban was here was incredible as well. And, I know Urban Meyer is a controversial figure sometimes, but what he did for our
amazing.
Set us up for the next 20 years to be a ranked team. And it is amazing what they've achieved.
Yeah. Well, I will have to tell you sometime the story of my 8-year-old son running on the field and getting caught in the crowd the year they beat BYU for the first time in forever. And one of the football players picked him up, put him on his shoulders so his uncle could find him. And he still has that player's gloves because he gave him his gloves and he still has them. And he's been a Utah fan ever since.
That is amazing.
Die hard.
I was at that game, and I survived all the years of the 1980s where it was they were so bad, and yet what Urban Meyer did for that team is they're still benefiting from the vision that Urban Meyer instilled in this team and that Kyle has taken forward. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I'll send you a text tomorrow night when they win, and
okay.
That's my prediction is that they're going to win at Oregon State, and they've got a tough schedule ahead of them. So hang in there.
Yeah, they do. But okay, I'll be waiting for your text. See you later. Bye-bye.